just the facts. Ah, several years ago, I had had a long, grueling day of sales and administration. I needed my sleep. As I dozed off, the phone rang. Ah, please let it be a short ring. I was getting the familiar late night communication from my manager. She would fax all of us our assignments. So frustrating. Every page was a herald of fanfare from my fax machine. Remember those? How many pages is she going to send me this time? It ended up being over 20 pages. My new district manager was so intense about details and getting our district sales up. She was from Dallas, but her personality was more like a New York subway. She smoked like a fish and suffered through migraines weekly. She was a hot dog on performance and expected us to follow suit. 22 pages had already gotten sent over, and it was 1:30 a.m. in the morning. I needed my sleep. I jumped out of my bed. Finally, I couldn't handle it anymore. I jumped up, ran to the office, and pushed the fax forward button on my fax machine. There. Finally, relief at last. As I turned to leave, I heard a loud thump. When I looked back, there was my manager. She was standing there and excited and stark naked. What have I done? I ran to my closet and brought her my bathrobe. How did this happen? Both of us were stunned. Roberta, my manager, could not contain herself and wanted to talk. We sat down and discovered that there was a way to capitalize on this experience. It turns out that the fax machine had a fast forward button that keyed into her wrist. Several years ago, she had had a chip implant that allowed her to fast track airline security. Because of all her travel, she wanted to save time, but she had no idea that it would get picked up by my fast forward button on my fax machine. We decided to start our own airline free travel agency. Once the chip got implanted into a person's wrist, all you had to do was dial the number of where you wanted to go, scan the chip, and then up, and away. Simple as that. The issue was that the scanner would only pick up biologic messaging, so clothing would get left behind. No problem. We had passengers send their belongings over ahead of time. FedEx, UPS, grooming needs available would be there when they had all their travel attire sent over as well. There were three major savings. First was the savings of time. Going through airline security, parking, renting a car, or having someone pick you up from the airport. The travel time was only what it took to fax over approximately 3 pages worth of electronic transmission, depending on the person's weight. A second bonus was that my manager lost her desire to smoke. Her migraine headaches had disappeared, and now she was that much richer in the throes of our new business. As a former nurse, she noticed that this method of travel resulted in total restoration of wellness. Apparently, the electronic breakdown of the body into fax waves that got restored at the destination also reconfigured the individual into their native genetic state of complete wellness. Faxing fixed the pathology so that complete wellness physiology was restored. No more medications, no more cravings, and no more pathology of disease. Third, this company has had a dramatic impact on the health care system that, as you know, was already broken. Faxing Wellness allows you to fax yourself to another number in your very own home. You do not have to worry about sending your clothing out ahead of time because they would be waiting for you in your closet of choice. Wellness vaccine eliminated the need for vaccinations, medications, or even exercise programs because you would reprogram your ideal weight into the chip implant. What a concept. The popularity of this method of travel and health care went viral. The consequence in time was, of course, a chip shortage. Well, now what are we going to do? Soon, we discovered that AI could be reversed from machine learning to biologic brain reprogramming. It was a genius discovery out of necessity. They called it reverse intelligence, or RI for short. Instead of programming a chip implant, they would simply reprogram your mind by using the FAX app. This was a huge advancement from using the now outdated fax machine. The fax app could be downloaded onto your phone, onto your smartphone. From there, you clarify the location you wanted to go to, or the needed health parameters, or even the career challenges you wanted to overcome. We called the program Creating Your Joy. This new development had all sorts of applications. However, it also had its unconventional drawbacks. Change was happening so quickly, people could virtually reinvent themselves by simply thinking of their future self, their health wise and career wise, or to which location they were going to. The whole private plane industry had to be reconfigured. The issue is especially paramount for couples separated for longer than 8 hours at a time. One spouse would come home and discovered they were now married to a complete stranger. The other unresolved issue was the exclusive capability of biologic transmission. How could they upgrade the process by including the transmission of clothing and personal items? They had already creatively branched out in the development of reverse intelligence, or RI, for biologic transmission. However, now they had to create the twin fax app that serviced three-dimensional items. It became the intelligent way to have these materials available on your trip. It was called material intelligence, or MI, for clothing and personal items. This development paved the way for the future of space travel. The company was growing by leaps and bounds, and our travel and wellness services were attracting tons of interest. Everything changed, however, when we met Mary and Jake. It turns out that Mary's violet eyes made Jake stay up nights pleading. Jake was so in love with Mary and her violet eyes, even after 30 years of marriage. The reason Jake stayed up nights pleading was because Mary had always wanted to go to the planet of Pluto. He kept pleading for an opportunity to make that a reality for her. On the other hand, Mars, as a planetary destination, was in the process of becoming inhabitable. Shipments of materials for construction were available almost every 2 or so years. Those rockets would go with cargo loaded down for construction. They could not be faxed, but it would take them from 4 to 6 months of travel going from Earth to Mars, depending on the payload and propulsion available. Construction workers, however, they could use the personal fax app travel from Earth far more easily for short-term building assignments. Travel time was only 3 to 5 minutes one way using the FAX app. Considering that travel was at the speed of light, and according to Einstein, since E is equal to mc squared, people needed to be converted to photons prior to transmission and then reconfigured to their body mass upon arrival. Our technology had advanced to that FAX app utilization and growing in efficiency every day. The other issue is that Mars, if you can imagine, Mars did not have any fax machines. They didn't have any fax receptors on site to date. What they discovered was that since there are electrons, protons, and neutrons, atomic elements common to planetary composition, they could be put to work. If those atomic elements are available at the landing site, at Mars, for instance, the electrons, or ET, could serve as the primary photon fax receptor upon arrival. If fax app technology drops the ET connection for some reason, all they had to do was text the message, ET, phone home, ET, phone home. No problem. Mary was convinced that the next solar system hurdle had to be the planet of Pluto. The International Astronomical Union, the IAU, in 2006 had demoted Pluto from a planet to a dwarf planet. Most people would say, well, who cares? Turns out 1 Plutonian year was equivalent to 248 Earth years. She wanted to participate in the ultimate anti-aging experience of staying as young as possible for as long as possible. If we lived on Pluto, none of us would ever be more than 1 year old. FaxApp could accomplish the round trip to Pluto with our photon technology in just under 9 hours. Wow. That is considering that the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, and that Pluto is 3.7 billion miles from Earth. She had that all figured out. She needed Jake to plead with us so we would bring him in on our space advanced travel adventure. We offered him the opportunity to buy in to the future with us. Mary was so proud of him for assuring that the achievement of her longevity goals would materialize, knowing that Pluto was finally going on her bucket list. The next significant hurdle was transporting and providing nutritious food that did not require refrigeration or preservatives. This kept all four of us up nights trying to develop a viable solution. The last thing I wanted to see on a solar planet other than Earth were the golden arches of McDonald's. This was a challenge. We had not anticipated this challenge. Then it hit us like a ton of bricks, enough to reconstruct the entire Great Wall of China. Our founding premise of travel was based on electronic transport of biologic material. Duh. The best food we could possibly eat would be all biological. The live fruits and vegetables, directly off the plant, and fresh chicken, beef, and seafood from organic, free-range sources. All of these fresh vitamins, minerals, and essential amino acids and fatty acids could easily be transmitted with our newly developed Photon FAX app. We presented it to our technology staff. They supplemented our ideas with an even larger form of nutritional enhancement. They came up with a process whereby all of these fresh foods would be scanned for FAX app transmission. The best part was that once the food was scanned, it did not have to be transmitted immediately. Each FAX app folder or attachment could hold trillions of photons per food scan session. Once loaded, we would just push the pause button. That keeps everything fresh until it's time to consume its contents. We expect to scan every single trip of transport, several tons of food for each trip to Mars for starters. This was a sigh of relief for me, as there is nothing worse in my mind than to eat dead food. As you know, packaged foods that come wrapped in their own coffin, they travel well, but have no nutritional value, and thus prevents the consumer from getting to the finish line in good health. To date, the one rocket, New Horizons, sent to Pluto by NASA in 2006, was traveling at a speed a little over 36,000 miles per hour. That ship took almost 10 years to travel from Earth to Pluto one way. NASA made it to Pluto in about 9.5 years. By contrast, our FAX app Photon technology was set for a round trip time of only 9 hours. Fancy that. The reason this travel time is significant is that Mary could leave Earth in the morning, get to Pluto before noon. She would spend a few minutes in the cryo lab and get the longevity health treatment at a minus 210 degrees Fahrenheit before returning home for dinner. Pluto, as a far out planet, stays pretty cold with its own refrigeration. This was her dream beauty treatment of relaxation amongst the asteroids. Of all of this actually was completely covered by Medicare. Mary and Jake were basking in the success of their longevity based on cryotherapy available on Pluto. 4 minutes of plunging temperatures sparked the ageless look of renewed collagen. Muscles and organs were restored from the impact of inflammation, and the boost of immunity assured their system an eternal microbiome of possibilities. We most certainly had the time warp technology beat with our speedy photon conversion FAX app unit. For years, Roberta and I have had the best time as business partners and friendship. We greatly and gratefully sell our cost-effective travel wellness advantage to insurance companies, and they love it. Since our inception as a travel agency on Earth and beyond, we have won technology awards that surpass the most innovative activity of photon transmission since Einstein. We have learned the benefits of living in ways that are considered far out, beyond limitations of popular thinking. We have surpassed NASA in space travel and national healthcare programs, including longevity extension with cryotherapy. Just take a quick trip to Pluto and the government will pay for it as well. We have garnered the benefits of innovation and celebrate the practice of future self thinking to unlock the barriers of expansion. Now, my fellow travelers, can you possibly believe all of this started a few short years ago with just the FAX? What a trip.